Well, tonight in Mob Talk, the murder of a mob associate inside his own home. 6 years after the gangland-style hit, the case remains unsolved. Now, in court papers, the FBI has identified a suspect, but no charges have been filed. Fox 29's Dave Schratweiser and the Philadelphia Inquirer's George Anastasia have more on what some have called a murder for many reasons.
Welcome to this week's edition of Mob Talk. I'm Dave Schratweiser.
And I'm George Anastasia with the Philadelphia Inquirer.
George, this week we're going to talk about the November 2003 murder of mob associate John Casasanto right here on the 1200 block of Durford Street.
Yeah, killed in his own house and probably let his killer into the house. That's one of the bizarre things about this unsolved murder.
George, let's start with the feds would like to put this murder in a racketeering indictment. It sounds like they have an idea, at least, who allegedly did this.
Yeah, I mean, there's no question. They have a theory of how it went down, and in an affidavit that was filed in the Borgata investigation in Atlantic County, they identified Anthony Nicodemo as a prime suspect. That's a sworn affidavit. So yeah, they have an idea how it went down and I think why it went down, but they haven't brought enough evidence to the table to bring any charges.
We talked about letting the killer in. It sounds like possibly Casasanto knew who it was who came to the door. They come in the door, he turns his back, heads towards the kitchen, and they shoot him in the back.
Yeah, I mean, that's the theory. He let somebody in who he trusted, and he turned his back on that individual. So obviously he wasn't concerned, didn't have any fear, and that's when he gets hit.
Any idea why you would do this inside his own home?
Well, there was some speculation that there was some stuff inside the home that the individuals wanted. That's one of the theories in the case. The other is, and when you think about it, what better place? You know, it's not out in the street, it's not out in the open, and his body doesn't get discovered till the next morning, so by that time the trail is gone cold already.
George, in some respects this has been called a murder for a lot of reasons. Recently we talked to a mob insider who thinks he knows at least one of the reasons why this happened.
The real reason Johnny Gongs is dead is because he shot in 1992 through Phil Legambi, who is Joe Legambi's brother's window, and he almost hit Phil Legambi and his son. He shot through a shotgun through his window.
George, a lot of other possible reasons as well.
Yeah, I mean, Johnny Gongs was a guy who lived his life on his own terms when it came to dealing with wise guys, when it came to dealing with women. And living your life on your own terms in this particular world that he moved around in creates problems. So there's multiple possible motives for why he was hit. And that's all the things that are being explored by investigators. And it's been, what are we talking about now, 7 years? And there's a lot of theories, but no charges.
Okay. I mean, some of the stuff he got into, there was a lot of talk about fights he got into in bars.
There was a stabbing at Club Deco down on off of Spring Garden. He was involved in that. There was apparently an altercation in Chicky and Pete's. He was involved in that. The other incidents that occurred. Like I said, the thing about Johnny Gongs was he wasn't afraid of anybody. I mean, and he did stuff that annoyed people. And the people that he annoyed, sometimes they react in this particular fashion. That coupled with, you know, was he involved in some criminality? We don't know. Could he have caused problems for other people from a criminal sense? Possibly. All of those things are factored in, and I think the feds and the Philadelphia Homicide Department have a theory of who did it, how it went down. They just don't have enough evidence to bring the case.
And he was a stand-up guy at one point. He got sent away in a racketeering case with John Stanford. 6 or 7 years.
Right. He was convicted in that Stanford racketeering case in 1994. Pled guilty, did his time. Come back out onto the streets. Now Stanford's gone, and he's aligned with, but not tight with, the organization, because the guys running the organization then were the anti-Stanford people. So, I mean, but again, to come back to it, Johnny Gongs, I think, didn't care about any of that. Johnny Gongs lived his life on his own terms.
Okay. Now, one mob insider told me this week that this hit, the orders for this hit, the planning of it, the carrying out of it, may not have come from the top of the mob. Is that possible?
Well, I mean, in a general sense. Here's the other interesting thing about that affidavit in the state police case in the Borgata investigation. The affidavit alleges that Anthony Nicodemo, one of the suspects, got made after that hit. Now, that's in the traditional mob sense. You take part in something like that and you get your button. If that, in fact, is true, the allegation, then this had to be an authorized hit. It had to come from the top. And at this particular point, Joe Legambi is the alleged boss. Anthony Stano is the underboss. Those kind of guys would have been aware that this was going down and would have had to sanction it if that affidavit is correct, if the allegations in that affidavit are true.
And once again, we'll make the point that no charges have been filed in this case. The feds would like to put this case in a new racketeering indictment, but at this point, absolutely nobody's been charged in this murder or the other two murders we saw.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, these are things that they want to put in a racketeering case, but don't have enough to do it yet. And I think it's going to depend on whether they get an insider to cooperate. So they're poking around the fringes of all of this.
George, finally, the feds kind of learned their lesson in the Joey Merlino trial in 2001 that you can't get a conviction on a mob hit unless you have an insider.
Yeah, it can't be circumstantial evidence. And the lesson was in the Stanford case. In the Stanford case, you had guys who said, I was the shooter, I had the gun, I did it, I put the gun over there. All of that evidence became part and parcel of the murder charge. In the Merlino case, it was all circumstantial, and they blew it. They didn't make any conviction on any of the violence in that racketeering case.
Okay, so that's it for this week's version of Mob Talk. We'll see you next week.